Mr. Kirk said for years that sometimes they're in schools, there has to be some live sacrifice to protect the Second Amendment.
I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights.
In a matter of seconds, a country music festival turned tragic, a storm of gunfire raining down upon an innocent crowd.
There's an active shooter situation in South Florida.
A student's teenage big brother describing the sounds of a gunman on the loose at Sandy Hook Elementary.
Got to be careful of the positions you take, because they might just come back and take you.
As we continue following this breaking news at 5 o'clock, conservative political activist Charlie Kirk has died after being shot, and the shooter.
Radical left political violence has hurt too many innocent people and taken too many lives.
But isn't there a problem with political violence across the spectrum?
Yeah, we're talking about Charlie Kirk right now. That's the subject of this that we're talking about right now. Democrats own this 100%.
I am not applauding his death. That boy should not have died. His children got to be raised without a father. His wife has to deal with living without her husband. It should not have gone down like that. But the Bible says, if you live by the sword,
you die by the sword. An unfortunate reality that is consistently projected in the realm of political theater. Since the death of Charlie Kirk, what we have is an aftermath of weaponization of his death, blame towards a specific political party before facts were even made, turning Charlie himself into a martyr, and now people's lives at an even greater risk. HBCUs locking down after threats are being made, Republican congressmen blaming Democrats and figureheads calling for vengeance after the attack, and a young college student from Delta State University by the name of Demartravian, or Trey Reed, found hung from a tree in public. Now, while the Bolivar County Sheriff's Department is claiming suicide, Ben Crump, his family, and Colin Kaepernick suggest otherwise and are demanding for a private investigation, asking for the DOJ and the FBI to assist in the situation. Luckily, Colin Kaepernick is joining this fray and paying for a private investigator. So hopefully we find out more information to what has happened to Trey. But what does the president do in this situation? Does he, A, calm down the rhetoric? B, say nothing and let his PR team work through it? C, insist that the violence needs to stop on both sides? Or D, blame the radical left? If you guessed D, then you would be absolutely correct. Blame the radical left and try and make this the biggest message possible to do some of the most unconstitutional things, all under the guise of protecting the people from political violence. You have the FCC chair threatening ABC to fire Jimmy Kimmel just because of a joke made against Trump, to which they did fire him. Luckily, he's back now. Trump calling for other late-night hosts to be removed from their broadcasting channels. And you even have the AG of Florida launching this combat violent extremism forum that is used to call out threats of political violence. While this sounds good on paper, what is deemed as a threat? If I say that I see my political opposition as enemies, is that considered a threat?
We're under invasion from within. No different than a foreign enemy, but more difficult in many ways because they don't wear uniforms. At least when they're wearing a uniform, you can take them out. These people don't have uniforms. But we are under invasion from within. We're stopping it very quickly.
If I say the Second Amendment advocates should do something about it when it comes to a political opponent, is that a threat?
Hillary wants to essentially abolish the Second Amendment. By the way, and if she gets to pick her judges, Nothing you can do, folks. Although the Second Amendment people, maybe there is, I don't know. But I'll tell you what, that will be a horrible day.
Is saying someone would have to shoot through the fake news to get to him a threat.
And I have this piece of glass here, but all we have really over here is the fake news, right? And to get me, somebody would have to shoot through the fake news. And I don't mind that so much, because I don't mind that.
Now, what I consider a threat can be a joke or hyperbole to somebody else. So why do this to begin with? Well, it's easier to create a boogeyman rather than admit that you were the cause, especially when you blame the other side without knowing all of the facts. Apparently, feelings now supersede facts when it's on your side. Speaking of feelings, what do we know about Charlie? What was his rhetoric like? And should we as a society consider him a martyr, or just someone that fell victim to the violence that has been fanned by the flames of the exact same rhetoric that he himself was more than happy to kindle? Well, depending on what side you are on, you may experience different rhetoric based on what you want to hear. But in my opinion, his rhetoric was somewhat dangerous and sometimes outright lies to perpetuate a narrative that doesn't exist. One reply that he has made was when asked about how many transgender Americans have committed mass shootings over the past 10 years. And his response was, too many. This was from Reuters. Data shows the complete opposite, though, per the Violence Prevention Project and the Rockefeller Institute of Government. Both data points show roughly 97 to 98% of mass shootings being done by males, 1 to 2% being done by females, and less than 1% being done by the trans community. I'll say it again. Less than 1%. This isn't the only thing he would say that is inflammatory. He said in a Jubilee video that if his 10-year-old daughter was raped and impregnated, that he would still make her carry that baby to term.
So if you had a daughter and she was 10 and she got raped, and she was going to give birth and she would, and she was going to give birth and she was going to live, would you want her to go through that and carry her baby?
That's awfully graphic.
But it's a real life scenario that happens to many people.
The answer is yes, the baby would be delivered.
Oh, okay, great. So that's insane.
But let me tell you why. No, hold on. Let me ask you a question.
Now, if that doesn't make you feel at least uncomfortable, I don't know what to tell you. He's called the Civil Rights Act a mistake.
All right. What's your question? Why did you say that the Civil Rights Bill should be overturned?
I didn't say that. I said it was a mistake.
Why? That's crazy.
Now you gotta figure it out.
I wouldn't be here. That's trouble.
Who's that?
Stated that Michelle Obama, Ketanji Brown Jackson, Joy Reid, and Sheila Jackson Lee, quote, had to steal a white person's slot to be taken somewhat seriously, touting the notion that this was the only way that they were able to acquire education that they've upheld through affirmative action.
You really have to wonder, in fact, if we would have said 3 weeks ago, Blake, if we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously. Play cut 52.
Although there's no evidence to support Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson using affirmative action as an example, she has issued major dissent against race-conscious practices in a case with the University of North Carolina. She recused herself, though, from the one in Harvard because she had personal ties towards Harvard, working in one of the governing boards. But she's placed multiple court cases and great examples as to why it's important to have affirmative action in every aspect, especially school. The former First Lady recalls her time in Princeton as one of the few Black Americans in that university, stating that while affirmative action is not perfect, It provided, quote, new ladders of opportunity for those who, throughout history, have to often be denied a chance to show how fast they can climb. In fact, our former president, Barack Obama, also echoed these sentiments and included his use of affirmative action to get to the position that he's in now. Quote, affirmative action was never a complete answer in the drive toward a more just society, but for generations of students who had been systematically excluded from most of America's key institutions, it gave us the chance to show we more than deserved a seat at the table. This doesn't prove, though, that they were given an easier time at these universities, but they were given a chance to prove themselves there. Both Joy Reid and Sheila Jackson Lee also stated that they utilized affirmative action to be able to get into these places like Harvard and Yale, but they still had to work extremely hard to get to where they are now. Affirmative action only got their foots into the door, while classmates used their wealth to get in. This, however, doesn't change the challenges that they still faced. But be that as it may, the rhetoric here that Charlie was portraying is that this one act was the only thing that acquired them a seat at their respective tables. And did you notice something very interesting? The difference between who I mentioned and who Charlie mentioned. He didn't mention our former president in this scenario because of a specific narrative. Why not include him? Why only include Black American women in this specific example? Could it be because women in general have a higher disposition to collect degrees rather than men? Is it because Black American women are closing the gap against white men when it comes to education? Well, who knows? What I do know is that this is a dog whistle to fringe groups that already have a disdain for other races, genders, religions, and sexual identities that aren't them. It shows blatantly when he weaponizes the Christian religion against the trans community. One issue, I think, that is so against our senses, so against the natural law, and dare I say, a throbbing middle finger to God, is the transgender thing happening in America right now. This was from a speech in 2023. He also stated about gay couples in 2022, quote, are not happy just having marriage. Instead, they now want to corrupt your children, end quote. This kind of rhetoric incites specific groups to go out and not only echo these sentiments, but also to commit acts of violence with these sentiments. Per the Williams Institute, for every 1,000 persons by February of 2025. Hey, so ignore what I just said for that last split second here. The article was made in February of 2025, but the data that they use actually comes from 2022 to 2023. Okay? Still correct though. 106.4 LGBT individuals experience violent victimizations, which is characterized as, quote, an attack or threat of attack, including simple assaults and acts of serious violence. Examples can be rape, sexual assault, robbery, aggravated assault, or violence involving a weapon, end quote. Estimates represent respondents who reported on at least one incident within the past 6 months. Trans members experienced 93.7 per 1,000 individuals, compared to 21.1 per 1,000 individuals among non-LGBT persons. The disparities are even expansively different by race. The first number I will give is LGBT compared to non-LGBT. 204.5 compared to 22.7 for Black Americans, 120.8 to 20.6 for Hispanics, 83.7 to 19.2 for white Americans. All per 1,000 individuals. This shows a major disparagement and disdain towards the LGBT community amongst other races and identities. And what Charlie would state during his speeches and debates obviously did not help. Even on the day of his passing, he was providing some of the same rhetoric towards his debates. And while I don't condone the death of Charlie, I'm not surprised that it has transpired. Political violence has been a rampant thing for decades, even centuries, and it's not something new. We'll go through that, though, momentarily. What I do want to mention is Utah native Tyler Robinson. He's charged with 2 counts of obstruction of justice, 1 count of discharge of a firearm, 1 count of commission of a violent offense in the presence of a child, 2 counts of witness tampering, and 1 count of aggravated murder, according to CNN. They're not counting out the death penalty in this case, but to me personally, I think the murder charge should suffice and just giving him life. It's not like he killed a politician or anything. Even then, though, the death penalty to me personally is basically them trying to make a statement. They're basically taking this made-up boogeyman that they've made and shouting at the left saying this kind of violence will not be tolerated. Like, we don't even know what his affiliation truly is and what his motive truly was. Everyone on the right continuously points out that his trans roommate, as if this is the main reason as to why he did what he did. But there's no such evidence to suggest this claim whatsoever. In fact, they want to paint him so badly to be a left-leaning liberal, to show that this death wasn't about the loss of Charlie, but more of an excuse to attack the political opposition. But the second of the possibility of this guy being on the right, they're going to sweep it under the rug and let this roach fester. Even if that was the case, that this individual was a Democrat, let's say I grant you this. Let's say that I grant you that he was a leftist, he was a progressive. I give you all of this, even though I shouldn't. Political violence has always leaned heavily towards the right. Per the Cato Institute itself, the right has always been the dominating force when it comes to this kind of violence. The only thing that superseded it was 9/11 because it was an Islamic terrorist attack at the time. CNN has also made a historical list from the recent Melissa Hortman murder all the way to when Reagan was attacked. And you can see the majority of these attackers leaned right wing. So what's the point in all of this? Well, simple. The right needs to address the real problem, denounce the rhetoric that they're spewing, and to stop jumping to conclusions when we clearly have no idea what is reality from fiction. Especially in a breaking news scenario like this. Even after 3.5 to 4 weeks out, we still have no idea what the motive is. The point being is our own president is blaming the left. He's perfectly fine with saying that he hates his opponents, that he thinks that his opponents are enemies. Nancy Mace going out and blaming Democrats immediately, then switching after she finds out, oh, this guy could have been leaning from the right. Tyler Robinson's own grandmother felt insulted by the fact that they called him a leftist when she kept saying that he was a MAGA and a right-leaning supporter. Members of Columbine, those same guys, were supporting Nazi-like rhetoric. As a perfect example, you've got members on the right like Alex Jones, who comes out here and says things like the Sandy Hook kids were actors and gets sued and loses the case for $1 billion that he still has to pay out, that he has to file bankruptcy for because of the lies that he was spewing. Instead of taking accountability and saying the guns could be the problem, the mental health issues that we have could be the problem. The FBI knew about Parkland. They knew about this situation with this individual, and instead of taking him and questioning him, they let it happen anyways, and those kids died. Uvalde. People were blaming the teacher of Uvalde for not kicking the rock, apparently, after finding out that a month prior to the shooting, there was, unfortunately, a misdiagnosis, you could say, or a complete lack of care to fixing that specific door that's supposed to lock from the outside. So the shooter was able to get in and kill all of those kids. Melissa Hortman died with her husband and her dog because some guy dressed up in a cop uniform with a fake mask and unalived them. Paul Pelosi gets cracked in the head with a hammer and people are making jokes about it, making fun of it. Trayvon Martin, the challenges that they did after he died, the George Floyd challenges that they would do after he died. The right is perfectly fine with joking about this kind of stuff, with letting this kind of rhetoric spew out of their mouths like a cesspool. But when something like this happens with Charlie Kirk and people saying, I don't care that he died, this is what was going to happen when he kept spewing this kind of stuff, it's his fault for doing so, what do? They sit in a corner and they cry like fucking babies. And then they weaponize his death, set up voting registration at his memorial, and treated it like it was WW-fucking-E. It's insane. The threats to the HBCUs immediately after what has happened, when we clearly had no idea who it was, they immediately targeted black colleges. Why? Why? Because that's what they wanted to do. That was their rhetoric. They were perfectly fine with pushing that rhetoric forward and saying, hey, we're blaming black Americans for something that a white American did. And on that same day that Charlie died, some kids got killed in a school in Colorado. We shouldn't be blaming members of the left for something that we have no idea is truth or false. Fact from fiction. Reality from conspiracy theories. We don't know. But on the online spaces that I've been a part of, I've heard people say things like Trayvon Martin deserved what he got after this kind of situation. Trayvon Martin didn't die in 2025. And I also have been hearing people say things like the left are going to get what they deserve. You Democrats are going to get what's owed to you. For fucking what? For what? We don't know his political affiliation at all whatsoever. And like I said before, even if it was the case that it was him being a part of the left, it still does not change the fact that it still leans towards the right. Maybe what we should be doing is finding out ways to be fixing our mental health issues. Maybe we should be finding ways to work on proper gun reform. Maybe we should be finding incentives to become more protective when it comes to our schools. Perhaps giving veterans better jobs as security at these schools. Giving them the opportunity to have something right after they get out. Potentially as an option. I don't know. That could be something. Maybe looking at the laws that were removed in places like Utah, where there was a gun-free zone law that was in Utah that was removed a month prior. Maybe we should be looking at that as well. Why get rid of that kind of law? Now you can walk around with a gun on campus. Oh, I see now. An unfortunate situation that happens. Now people are making conspiracy theories saying that Israel was the one that did it. The FBI wanted this to actually happen. Trump himself wanted this to happen because he wanted to use somebody as a tool to stop having people think about the Epstein files. Or even hearing people say that Israel wanted this to happen because he didn't support them. I don't know what kind of nonsense people have to think in their head in order for them to not take accountability. But maybe that's what they should be doing. Maybe what these people should be doing is saying, hey, we took a law away in Utah that could have prevented this from happening. And that is our fault. Maybe they should be looking at themselves in the mirror and saying, maybe what he was saying was messed up against people that lived in this country. And whether or not Tyler Robinson had that as his motive, I don't know. No one knows. The point is that we should not be jumping to conclusions when we don't have all the facts, when we don't know all the information, and we shouldn't be going after places and trying to make them feel like their lives are going to be on the line. But hey, because of the rhetoric that he spewed, this kind of thing happening, respectfully, I don't care. This all could have been easily prevented, easily preventable, and easily removed out of the way. But no, this is what they wanted to talk about. This is how they wanted to represent themselves. Well, like a pastor once said to me, online to the rest of the world, the Bible says,
you will reap what you sow.